So Adam Grundy is a supervisor for the data user and trade outreach branch at the U.S. Census Bureau in Suitland. And he's going to give us a presentation on the economic census. So Adam, I'll turn it over to you.
All right, let me just go ahead and share my presentation. All right, so just give me a quick confirmation that you guys can see this.
Yes, I can see it.
All right, perfect. So thank you for the introduction and thank you for the invite for today's presentation. So today we're going to be talking about the New Jersey related data from an economic data overview. And let me go to the next slide. A little bit about myself. I'm a supervisor in the data user and trade outreach branch. Been there for about 5 or 6 years, but I've been at the Census Bureau for 15 years, and almost all of that has been in the economic directorate. So I'm very familiar with a lot of our business data, as you can imagine. So I also lead the Econ Outreach Working Group, which helps us track a lot of different data releases, upcoming data products, data visualizations, America Count stories, and things like that to help steer the ship for the Economic Directorate. I also maintain an online calendar for the Economic Directorate. Again, that helps us track a lot of different upcoming data releases, data products, and also major national observances. Like we just are in the process of celebrating Manufacturing Week, which occurs the first Friday in October and goes to the following Friday. So we're wrapping that up towards tomorrow. I've also written several articles for the America Count series that I mentioned before. If you haven't seen some of those articles, you just go to census.gov/America Counts, and you can check out some of the articles that we have recently published. I was also the former president of a General Workforce Advisory Board before I got the promotion into this outreach area. And I also have a bachelor's degree in human studies from St. Mary's College of Maryland. And I have a certification in elementary education. So I was a 4th grade teacher before I worked at the Census Bureau. So a unique career path for sure. So in the Economic Directorate, this is how we're structured. As you probably heard from our colleague earlier today and earlier in the week, we have different directorates. We have the Decennial Directorate, which gets all the most notoriety with the population survey. We also have a Demographic Directorate. And then I'm the expertise with our economic data. So the way we can think of the economic data is by this pyramid that you can see right in front of you. So we have our high frequency data at the top. This would be things like our small business pulse survey or COVID-19 data hub that were stood up during the pandemic to help us track the recovery efforts of businesses during the pandemic. Other things that we see on the pyramid is our monthly and quarterly data that have smaller sample surveys, and they provide the most up-to-date timely data available. This would be things like our M3 or Manufacturers Inventories and Orders Survey, where you hear about in the news like durable goods going up 3% for March or down 4% for April. That usually on the news they report that it's from the Department of Commerce, but it's really the Census Bureau that's getting all the hard work done behind the scenes, even if we don't get all the credit. In the middle of our pyramid is our annual surveys. These have larger sample sizes, and they provide the most up-to-date trend data available. So we have things like the annual retail trade survey, service annual survey, annual wholesale trade survey, and more. And later on in the presentation, I'll be explaining about an exciting 7-in-1 annual surveys that have been merged into one called the Annual Integrated Economic Survey, or AIES. It says, as you probably have gotten familiar, we love our acronyms at the Census Bureau. And every 5 years, we measure all businesses and governments by providing the most up-to-date comprehensive data available. This will be from our economic census with the years ending in the digit 2 and also 7. So we're currently in the 2022 economic census cycle of publishing our data. And also we have a census of governments during those same years as well. And then at the bottom of our pyramid, of course, is our foundational administrative data that we get from our business register. It allows us to supplement, produce additional economic products from either the IRS or other sources. This is a little bit more about how we're structured in the Economic Directorate. We see something on the right-hand side called a NAICS hierarchy. That stands for North American Industry Classification System. And that's our primary data dimension. So basically, the main thing to take away from this is that if you start at the sector level or a 2-digit level, you're getting pretty broad category of information. As you add more digits to your NAICS code, as you kind of could see from the data.census.gov presentation, there might be less available as you go to a more specific industry, like a 6-digit NAICS code of 515112 or radio stations. So just things like that to keep in mind. Not all economic surveys go down to the 6-digit level. And then we have the concept of establishments versus companies and firms. Usually companies and firms are used pretty much interchangeably. It basically just means that if you have one main company, that's like the overarching one that can have multiple establishments within it. And establishments are the single physical location of a business. So if you have the example of Adams Bakery, just making this up, in Maryland, as the main company, and he has 4 different establishments spread out throughout Maryland, that'd be one company, but 4 establishments. So we also have things such as employers versus non-employers. An employer is somebody that has paid employees, which is pretty simple to think about. Non-employers is a little bit of a different concept. These people have no paid employees. There's self-employed individuals. We see a lot of activity in non-employers for various sectors. For example, like taxi and limousine services, real estate agents, home daycares, and things like that, where you expect a lot of people to be independent contractors. And then U.S. Title Code 13 and 26 protects all these business privacy and confidentiality, allows us to repackage the data in meaningful ways from our surveys and programs. So I'm going to talk about a little bit more about our key surveys and programs. You've heard a little bit about it from the data.census.gov presentation, but let me dive right in. So first of all, we have county business patterns at the top. This program covers employer businesses in the United States. Allows us to publish great infographics, like you see the breweries one over here that we're going to be re-promoting later on for, I believe, Oktoberfest type related material. So that one I help coordinate for the employment size ranges from 2019 to 2022. So the number of breweries in the United States has gone up each year. We also have non-employer statistics, which covers all the non-employer businesses in the United States. So again, businesses with no paid employees. The annual business survey covers employer businesses in the United States. And the great thing about the annual business survey is it allows us to produce business owner data. So if you're looking for the number of Asian-owned restaurants in the state of New Jersey, annual business survey would be your best bet. If you're looking for the number of, let's say, retail locations owned by veterans in the state of Texas, annual business survey again would be your best bet. And then at the bottom is our main breadwinner for the Economic Directorate, called the Economic Census, which is the official 5-year measure of American businesses, and it provides pretty granular level at national, state, and local levels. So starting first with county business patterns, the latest data available as of today's date is for calendar year 2022. Excuse me. The 2022 data were released in June of 2024, and this includes statistics on a lot of different categories. Number of establishments, so again, single physical location of a business, employment, how many employees they have, annual payroll for nearly every 2 through 6-digit NAICS code. So very rare for an annual program to go down to such specific levels. And then also it goes down to much more specific geographic levels too. These are published at the national, state, metro, county, congressional district, which is the only annual program that goes down to the congressional district level, and zip code level. So we had some questions in the earlier session about whether or not there's zip code level data, and my colleague did correctly say that zip code business patterns is one of those economic programs that covers zip code level data for Economic Directorate. So we also cover the 5 U.S. territories. So if you're looking for data for Puerto Rico and other island areas, we would have that from county business patterns. Another one that I'll be talking about is non-employer statistics. So you can kind of see on the left-hand side our chart about things in the gig economy, or people that work either a secondary job or maybe their primary source of income. So you see taxi and limousine services being a large revenue driver of this, non-employers, janitorial services, real estate managers, child daycare services. So again, those home daycares. So this one is published on an annual basis, and the latest data available, unfortunately for this, is for calendar year 2021. This was due to our good friend COVID, which slowed down a lot of production in the IRS, which we rely on the IRS to provide us information about these non-employers. So the latest data was released for 2021 in March of 2024. So that program is playing a little bit of catch up at this point, much like a lot of other areas affected by the pandemic. So these data are published by the number of firms and revenue for nearly every 2 through 6-digit NAICS code. And the data are published at the national, state, metro area, and county levels. Unfortunately, NES does not cover the 5 U.S. territories, but it's one thing that maybe we could see in the future. And the next program is called the Annual Business Survey. The latest data available for as of today's date is for calendar year 2022, with the caveat of 2023 first look data, or 2 or 3 digit sector level data, released in January 2024. So later on this year, or potentially at the beginning of next year, I have to double check my dates. The Annual Business Survey full release will be coming out for 2023. This includes statistics on number of firms, employment, annual payroll, many other categories that you see in the economic census for nearly every 2 through 4 digit NAICS code. Again, not quite the 6-digit level. Data are published at the national, state, county, and place levels. Does not cover the 5 U.S. territories, but the great thing, like I mentioned before, about the Annual Business Survey is you see great business owner data. So race, ethnicity, gender, veteran status, other characteristics of the business and their owners. So it allows us to produce graphics that you see on the left-hand side, such as American, Asian American and Native Hawaiian, and other Pacific Islander Heritage Month. Quite a mouthful of a title, but we also allows us to produce these great data sources from the Annual Business Survey. And then coinciding with the ABS is our NESD, or Non-Employer Statistics by Demographics. This one is also published on an annual basis. And the 2021 data was just released on August 8th of 2024. So again, they're playing a little bit of catch up as well. This includes the number of non-employer firms and their revenue sources. Data are published at the national, state, metro, and county levels. Does not cover the 5 U.S. territories, unfortunately, but it does allow us to provide non-employer demographic activity. So, for example, looking for the non-employer business owners' sex, ethnicity, race, veteran status, their age, even their place of birth, if they provide that information to us, and the U.S. citizenship as well, as if they provide that information to us as well. All right. So then again, like I mentioned before, the main breadwinner and the main purpose for our presentation today is the economic census. This is conducted every 5 years, again, in digits ending in 2 and 7, and provides the most comprehensive economic data available, and it serves as a benchmark for other economic surveys. So much like you saw in that pyramid, everything gets benchmarked down to the economic census. It's conducted 100% online. The 2022 economic census was sent out originally in a paper form for just an authentication code, I should say, that allows people to do all the response online, and we provide support through online systems as well that remain confidential. So we're required by law to keep all this information private and secure, lifelong sworn status. So even if I went back to being a teacher, which I'm not going to do, I would still not being able to tell anybody about which businesses are in the economic census or any of our surveys and programs. There's about 4 million business locations that do receive the economic census, and the results are starting to come out, and they are free to use and all online. So this slide talks about the business universe of the target universe of the economic census. So while there are 30 million total businesses in the United States, only 4 million of them will receive the economic census or have received it. 8 million of those businesses are employer establishments. So that means about 22 million businesses are non-employers. Quite alarming to think about. But again, the economic census only focuses on the employer businesses and only businesses with paid employees. This is some of our response campaign that many of you have seen before and helped us out with in the New Jersey area and beyond, with getting the word out about how your response can make a difference. So you can see on the left-hand side, we have Linda being a baker, using the census data in order to open up a bakery in Montgomery County, Maryland, which is where I'm from. Or you see Paula, an example of an economic development planner that uses all the data from the economic census in order to make informed decisions in New York County, New York. Or Joseph on the right-hand side used census data to help acquire a small business loan. So using data tools like Census Business Builder that you'll be hearing about later on today in order to make an informed decision about where to open their business. And this is our economic census release schedule. You will be able to get a copy of the slides, I believe, after the presentation if you haven't already. So you don't have to furiously take notes about all these different upcoming dates. But we're currently in the phase of releasing the U.S. Virgin Islands, which came out in July of 2024. Puerto Rico is coming out in December 2024. And the big news is that the geographic area statistics are being released at the end of this year, not next year. It was originally scheduled for March of 2025. And this is one of the main releases that we have. It provides data at the U.S., state, and selected geography levels from nearly every 2 through 6 digit NAICS and 7 through 8 digit NAICS-based codes, all released on the exact same day. So in the past, for the 2017 economic census, we had a map that showcased like Maryland's been released, and New York's been released, or Texas has been released now. We're releasing all the states on the exact same day. So that way you can tell your data users in New Jersey that New Jersey will be released the exact same time as everybody else. So that's great news. Other statistics coming from the economic census are bridge, comparative releases, establishment and firm size statistics, our product statistics, and finally, all the catch-all things, the miscellaneous subjects, will be released in March of 2026. So we have data releases going all the way till then. Next is our public sector or government survey. They provide 5 different surveys to provide economic statistics about state and local governments. So you see things such as annual survey of state and local government tax revenue. I recently wrote an article for American Accounts that was pretty well received about how different states use legalized gambling revenue for different sources of income for public education, things like that too. So you should be able to check that out on census.gov too. And the response is voluntary, but there's virtually no confidentiality restriction. So the data is public record from these governments. So it allows us to kind of repackage the data in a way that makes sense for our data users. So these are released on Excel files and other census data tools rather than data.census.gov, but occasionally you'll see them pop up on infographics and things like that too to help data users make better sense of the data. And like I teased before, the AIES, or Annual Integrated Economic Survey, is coming out. What it is it combines 7 of our annual surveys, you can see on this little wheel here, with the different acronyms, into one main survey. So this was done in order for us to meet data users' needs with timely, granular, and standardized data. Budgets were also being constrained over time. So in order for us to get some of the response rates up for some of our annual surveys that you see over here, we're replacing 7 of these annual surveys into just one main survey. So this is things like the annual retail trade survey, annual survey of manufacturers, things that have been around for a long, long period of time, all into this repackaged survey. So why are we doing this? Well, it's to adapt to evolving needs of respondents and data users. It helps ease the respondent burden. So you can think if you were a company that had, let's say, 5 out of the 7 surveys to respond to forms to, it's a big burden on them to respond to 5 different surveys. This one allows us to pick just one main survey for them to respond to. There might be some situations where they respond to more than one survey, and we recognize it doesn't ease the burden for everyone, but it does ease the respondent's burden for the majority of the people out there. And this allows us to align and coordinate survey lifecycle activity with different harmonized content. So asking some of the questions that make sense for a manufacturer versus a retail location, all in the same spot. So we're currently in the collection closeout phase. October 31st, 2024 is when we're going to close out the first version of the AIES. And the data will start to come out in July of 2025. So next summer is going to be very exciting for a lot of us. This one I'm just going to kind of glance over because I know we have a presentation after this from my colleague Nadal who's the expert for Census Business Builder. But I'm going to talk about some of the key ways you can actually use this data tool. So we're currently in version 5.7. It basically, if you're not familiar with Census Business Builder, it overlays economic and demographic data onto a map, so you can quickly pull up different statistics about whatever state level geography or county level geography or more, even more specific than that you're looking for. It was helped developed by Esri or ESRI, and it pulls directly from our Census API to keep things moving speedily, and it's all cloud based and provided for free. And the URL, if you're not familiar, is cbb.census.gov. So I'll talk a little bit about this, and I'll try not to steal Nadal's thunder too much, but we do have reports within this that helps people with either determining different facets of what variables they're looking for, or either to help them form a business plan itself. So if they're looking for the business comparison one that we see on the right-hand side, how other businesses like theirs or even different from theirs are around that same geographic area, how they can kind of leverage each other and play off of each other in order to make sure they're going to be a successful business long term. So these are some of our data sources, a lot of things that I've talked about today. County business patterns, the American Community Survey you heard about earlier, non-employer statistics, the economic census, and survey of business owners, which has now become the annual business survey. We also have imports and exports data wherever it makes sense for international trade program. And with that, I mean, we're not going to have like a restaurant being an import or export, because wouldn't obviously uplift an entire restaurant and go export that. But we have some manufacturing data that would be related to imports and exports that would make sense. We also have workforce data from the Quarterly Workforce Indicators program, building permits data. You can even upload your own data, and we have some special flyers on the Census Business Builder webpage that shows you exactly how to do that. Consumer spending data that we purchased directly from Esri that put back into the program. So if you want to see how much people are spending out on dining out for, let's say, lunch in a certain county, you'd be able to figure that out. Or see how much people are spending on retail locations in the state of, let's say, New Jersey. We would have information about that in this data tool. So this one just gives you a little bit of a glance about opening a business in New Jersey. You can see the total number of establishments here, single physical locations in New Jersey, being a little bit under 330,000. And then non-employers that you can look at over here. These are the non-employer firms in New Jersey, 787,315 non-employers for all sectors of the economy. That's quite a large number. And we almost always see the non-employers outweigh the number of employer establishments in almost all sectors of the economy. And just at a glance, you can see New Jersey, how it compares to the number of establishments or whatever your main variable is. As you look at the geo ranking as it compares to California, Florida, Texas, New York, and so forth. And this one just shows you a little bit about the report. So you can see the report showcases on the primary variable, which was the number of establishments. And you see the green shaded state there. Okay, so this is some detail about New Jersey businesses data at a glance. So we have 499 business establishments in all sectors of the economy, according to the 2022 County Business Patterns. There's 3,813,702 total employees in all sectors of the economy in the state of New Jersey. And if you're looking for the top 5 sectors by number of establishments, you can see retail trade is followed by healthcare and social assistance, professional, scientific, and technical services, another sector, other services, and then construction rounds out the top 5. And I am going to show you some of one thing that's from our county business patterns recently, and I'm going to add this to the chat real quick. It's an interactive data visualization that allows you to, I'm doing too many things at the same time, but let me put this in the chat. Interactive data visualization. But basically what it does is it allows you to either hover over a state or a certain county, and it's giving me errors at the moment, but if I hover over New Jersey, let me reload this. Sorry about that. So if I hover over the state of New Jersey and just leave it there, you'll see a nice little pop-up that comes up that I pulled up for some of those different sectors that you can see. So if you're looking for professional, scientific, and technical services for the state of New Jersey, all these different things will be available to you. So what this does is it pulls data from the county business patterns and it overlays it onto a map, much like Census Business Builder would do. But you can click on different ones. For example, if you're interested in just manufacturing, you can select that and click apply. You can see where most of the manufacturing activity takes place in the United States after this reloads. Okay. And then if you want to go to the actual state, you can click on the state of New Jersey by clicking on change state and going to New Jersey. And I'm going to turn this back to all sectors of the economy and click apply. So you can see as you can go over different counties, and basically the size of the circle corresponds to the primary variable that you've selected. So over in this example here, you can see the number of establishments for Middlesex County in New Jersey compared to, let's say, this one, Bergen County, New Jersey. So you can go by county within this particular thing using county business patterns data. And I also wrote an American account story that's going to be coming out soon. It uses the same interactive data visualization that shows you how you can quickly reference some of these statistics. Other ones that are available would be number of employees, first quarter payroll, and annual payroll from the county business patterns. You can go back to the map by clicking on back to national map. Okay. So I put that in the chat for you to kind of peruse at your own leisure. So let me go back to the presentation. Okay. So this is another example about how you can use census data for your own purposes. So let's say there's an economic planner named Jesse who'd like to identify possible trends in California's economy. So he can look at Census Business Builder and other data tools to look at the number of employer establishments, number of non-employer firms, and different NAICS sectors to get an understanding of what's happening in specific sectors. That allows them to figure out where they're maybe lacking in certain economic activity and where they're also thriving in order to be a top-of-mind economic planner. And then at the same time, if you're opening up a restaurant, let's say two colleagues named Pat and Chris are owners of a successful pizza franchise in my hometown of Rockville, Maryland, and they're considering purchasing a second franchise in Annapolis, Maryland. So they would want to look at some of the different things within Census Business Builder, such as how many families have one or more children. That would be available to them. Customers that live within 10 miles of the restaurant, again, looking at different commuting patterns, foot traffic, things like that. And then again, from Census Business Builder, where consumer spending data shows that there's a large revenue for people dining out for either lunch, dinner, or both, that would help them make an informed decision for that. And then you already heard about data.census.gov today, but I'm going to talk about some other key ways you can access our economic data. The one at the top left is called Quick Facts, and much like the name implies, gives you a quick snapshot of what's going on at different geographic levels. My congressional district is the next one over here. So even if you don't know what your congressional district is in different districts of New Jersey, you can type in a zip code, and it can plug in directly what your district is, who the representative is for Congress, and also some business level data at that congressional district that comes from county business patterns. You also have my tribal area on the map for emergency management, which tracks a lot of different ongoing natural disasters. So just like you heard in the news about Hurricane Milton hitting Florida, we would be able to track some of the recovery efforts from that. And then finally, Census Business Builder on the bottom right. You'll be hearing a lot about that and a key demo for that later on today. And then we also have the COVID-19 Data Hub, which was stood up during the pandemic, the API and Tiger shapefiles and things like that. So I'm going to stop there for questions, and I'll see if there's anything else you want me to show you today. So thank you for your attention today.
Okay. Let's see. We have a question. Was non-employer numbers always greater than the business with employers, even before COVID?
Yeah, almost always for all sectors of the economy, we see that the non-employers almost always outweigh the number of employer establishments. So if you only get a piece of the number from county business patterns, you're only getting a part of the economy. You have to look at the non-employers and county business patterns numbers together to get the full picture of what's going on.
Okay. Any more questions for Adam?
Thought there would be more questions. My
Yeah.
goodness. A lot of great data here.
Yes, there is. Now I'll ask you a question.
Sure.
We work obviously with the American Business Survey and the non-employer statistics.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the non-employer statistics also have files, also have employer data on it as well.
Yes.
You had in your run through in terms of the products, you had called out that the ABS is the better vehicle to get employer stats from. But one of the things we like about the non-employer statistics is that we have both of those numbers on the same file. So is
Sure.
is there a reason to use the American Business Survey versus the non-employer statistics file?
Yeah, so the annual business survey is great because it allows us to pull statistics about the business owner's demographics, and the NESD, non-employer statistics by demographics, pulls the same demographics and more for these non-employer businesses too. So kind of the same thing with the county business patterns and non-employer statistics. You merge those two together, you get the full picture of what's going on for the demographics of these business owners in the United States.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
Sure.
Any future data that you considering?
Yeah, so we're always looking for new ways to kind of be top of mind. Like the COVID-19 data hub was stood up during the pandemic, like I mentioned before. Also, there's a spot on census.gov called experimental data products. So if you go to census.gov and look for the term experimental data products, we also see things that are kind of in the works, like an annual capital expenditures survey on robotics and robotics equipment, seeing if there's certain industries where robotics may potentially um, take take the job of a physical person. You know what I mean? So they're looking at different things like that when measuring the different impacts on the economy. And a lot of these experimental data products as well too. And one question was about how often data is collected. I can see the chat too.
Okay,
So,
great.
so a lot of those are on an annual basis. A lot of the things I talked about today, with the exception of the economic census, is every 5 years. And then I also see besides robotics, how about AI? There's some things that are incorporating AI a little bit into the surveys. Again, mostly in the experimental data products. So I'd recommend you check out that section of census.gov too.
Okay.
And then one says any data set on grocery stores, business establishments. Yes, county business patterns would be your best bet for that. Again, we have some mom and pop grocery stores out there too. So again, look at the non-employers and see how they compare within that. So using data tools like Census Business Builder and typing in the search grocery stores would be a quick way to look at the impact on both of those things.
There was also a question in there. I'm not sure, maybe you answered it. Besides robotics, how about AI?
Yeah, so I mentioned like there's some experimental data products that are actually starting to
Okay,
incorporate the use of AI in them. So
gotcha,
we're considering even doing that with some of our more established data products too. Of
gotcha. Yeah, we have some thank you comments. Any
course,
more
yeah.
questions
Anything.
for Adam? That's the nice part about this forum. You get to talk directly to people that are uh, involved with the data and ask your questions. So we've had some good questions over the last 2 days. Feel free to ask away. This is the benefit of being here live as opposed to watching the recording later. You can actually ask some questions here.
Yep.
Okay. Are any one set of data more difficult to collect?
I would say probably the economic census because it takes the most amount of time to actually put together the planning process for that. It's basically a 5-year effort that we're looking at. So We have to make sure that the response rates are good enough for us to publish the data for certain levels of geography too, to protect the individual businesses as well. So, and where can we get the recording? Maybe a question
Where
for
can we
you.
get the recording? Yes. We dropped that in the chat earlier. We're coming up on a hard break. I'll drop all the information again into the chat. There is a website where the recording will be. The recording will be up there hopefully within the next couple of weeks. It takes a little bit of time to split everything up, and our staff here, our IT staff, it takes them a little time to get things up and running on. They set these up as a YouTube playlist for us. So there's a lot of presentations here to put into that. So they have to cut out some time to do it. So hopefully within a couple of weeks we'll have those recordings up on the website. We'll send an email out to everybody. We have a post meeting email that we'll send out to everybody with some things that some presentations that we were not able to present today, and of course more information on various publications that we produce, and the ability to get on our mailing list. I dropped some of that stuff in the chat earlier, but I understand it may not be visible to people who may have came in late. So we'll drop it in again after the hard break. Let's see. We have another question. We have a comment. Fantastic. And then, are there step-by-step instructions on how to search this source?
It depends on what they mean by the source. Can they clarify? If they mean the data visualization that I showed earlier, maybe.
Yeah, could you clarify the source, Shirley? You can unmute and speak rather than type if it's easier. Database.gov.
I'm not too familiar with that, so yeah, that might be a question for maybe somebody above my pay grade for the full database. So,
any more questions?
oh, maybe she meant data.
You mean data.census.gov. Oh, okay.
And to kind of answer that, it would be we have a lot of different tutorials, data gems, and other tutorials in there on data.census.gov that helps people navigate that too. And also we have different colleagues like Cannon that came and presented, looking back to those recordings and also asking questions. There's also an ask.census.gov email address that allows you to ask specific questions about that data source as well too.
And again, Kanan went through some step-by-step run-throughs of some of the data sources that she presented, the DHC files. And the way you go about getting to that data is kind of the same for depending upon what data set you use, whether it's the American Community Survey, the decennial census, and she will be sending me her slide decks that show her step-by-step process to get to that data. So there's that. And as Adam mentioned, there's a number of tutorials on the Census Bureau's website related to data.census.gov. There's webinars, there's their data gems product that they put up there, which are short, concise videos in terms of how to do various things. So those are great too. And again, Kanan's going to be coming back at 3:15, and we definitely can ask her that question when she comes back this afternoon. Thank you, Devin, for that comment. Any other questions? Going once. Going twice. Okay, Adam, thank you very much for coming to our meeting today and educating us on the various census products related to the economic census. Obviously, the American Business Survey and the non-employer statistics are a little less familiar to people in the economic census. So I thank you very much for bringing those data sets up, because we do use those quite a bit when we're looking at male, female-owned businesses,
Yeah.
businesses by race, veteran status. It's very valuable data set when we want to look at that breakout in terms of businesses in New Jersey.
Great.
It's one of the only sources you can go to for that, if not the only source that you can go to for that information.
Right.
So thank you very much for your presentation today and coming to actually do the presentation. So
Of course.
thanks again.
Happy to do so. Yeah. Always
Yeah.
great to speak with these groups.
Thank you very much. Okay, we're coming up against a hard break. We're going to come back at 2:30, where we'll sort of continue with the discussion of the economic census. We have Census Business Builder and Small Business Regional Analyst Edition. Nadal Gibran, who's a program analyst in the Economic Management Division, will be giving us a presentation on the actual Census Business Builder tool itself. He'll go into more depth as far as that particular product goes. So we'll see you all at 2:30.